Section 16. Number 4. This will be made more probable if you consider the quality of some former ages, which might and did give great advantage to error to creep in under the mask of tradition, and consequently evinceth how easy it was for one age to mistake the doctrines of the preceding age. To this end, consider with me the condition of the 10th age, of which I shall desire you to judge according to the testimony of their own authors. The words of Baronius are these: In the 900th year of Christ, the third indiction, a new age begins, which, by reason of its asperity and barrenness of good, is wont to be called the Iron Age, from the deformity of abounding wickedness and leaden, and from the scarcity of writers, the obscure age. The Genebrared, though according to the manner of the beast he chargeth it upon the Lutherans, that they only call it Saeculum Infelix, an unhappy age. Yet he elsewhere forgets himself, therein the more excusable, because he was one of them who ought to have good memories, and in his chronology plainly tells us this is called the unhappy age, being barren of ingenuous and learned men, and tells you that the popes of that age, the principal conservators of tradition, and the subjects of infallibility, had altogether fallen from the virtue of their ancestors, and were rather apostates than apostles. Can any man doubt of the power of papists to make a transubstantiation when we see with our eyes, that they can turn every piece of wood into an infallible doctor? I think I need say nothing for the confutation of Mr. White's argument, but barely repeat it, that the reader may compare it with the state of this age. It is this: the whole church, or major part of it in every age, were so knowing that they infallibly understood all the doctrines of the foregoing age, and so carefully and pious that they would not deceive themselves nor their posterity. Answer the argument I need not, but only observe 3 things in this age, which will prove hops theolothanos, not only the probability of a great probability, both of mistaking their ancestors and of deceiving themselves and their posterity. Number 1, ignorance. Number 2, carelessness and profaneness. And number 3, scarcity of writers. No man can adjudge infallibility to such an age unless he will offer violence to all his rational powers. Section 17. First, here was gross ignorance in the generality of the clergy, the popes themselves not excepted. The whole world was overspread with darkness as thick as that in Egypt, saith Baronius. It is reported that at that time there were no public schools, saith Carolus Sigonius, and the Synodotus Remensis, cited by Baronius, plainly say that at that time it was reported that there were scarcely any learned men at Rome. He that saith so ignorant an age could not mistake must needs be in a dream, and when he awakes I shall give him further answer. If any prudent man, who will not suffer his eyes like Samson's to be put out, that he may grind in the Pope's mill, reflect upon the state of some ignorant country congregations among us, if he please to examine them, he shall find them so far from understanding infallibly the doctrines delivered by their ancestors and former ministers 20 or 30 years before, that they do not understand the opinions of their own age, nor so much as those which their minister, though an able, painful, and plain preacher, such as were very few in that age, hath been preaching upon for divers years together. And yet, forsooth, the company of such men as these, by Mr. White's argument, are free from all possibilities of mistakes. What were the doctrines delivered by the age before them? Section 18. Number 2. There was an universal carelessness and profaneness upon men's spirits. Neither ministers nor people did much busy their heads about such matters, but minded only the advancement of their secular interest and the pampering of their bellies, say their own historians. The clergy, then, were universally negligent in teaching and instructing the people, whose ignorance they saw most serviceable to their designs, and the people were as careless to understand the concernments of religion. And if this very carelessness and profanity did utterly loose and extinguish all the sentiments and doctrines of true religion, delivered by Adam and Noah in their posterity, why might it not be so after Christ's time? Mr. White and his partisans venture their salvation upon the truth of this absurd proposition, that it was impossible the same cause should produce the same effects. Nor is it to any purpose that Rushworth alleged to prove the disparity, that is, that only one man and one woman were witnesses of those high wonders, whereas the gospel had immeasurable miracles witnessed to multitudes of people in diverse countries, that the hearers could hardly believe them, that they had but a slight care of recommending God's service to their children, and that they were taken up with the world's plantation and other secular affairs, and there was no set form and institutions of priests and governors to join all nations in communion, no chief bishop. For, first, supposing that which divines generally believe, that is, that Adam truly repented of his sin, it is contrary to common sense to believe that he who had such a fresh knowledge and lively sense of the difference between highest felicity and utmost misery should be careless in the concernments of religion, that he that had been the unhappy instrument of ruining all his posterity should not use all possible diligences to heal the wound himself had made, and with greatest instances and importunities endeavor the perpetuation of religion to his posterity. Number 2. It is false to say there were then no priests, no chief bishop, to take care of religion. For though there were none that had the names, yet there were that had the office and did the work, that is, the heads of families, and especially the great and common Father and universal Bishop of all mankind. And it is both against reason and experience and charity to think this natural bishop would take less care of the conversation of religion among his own natural children than the Bishop of Rome would do among his titular relations. Number 3. As for the wonders of the creation, they were so great and glorious and innumerable, and at that time so evident and unquestionable, that it is the greatest wonder of how they could disbelieve them, or so soon wear out the memory of them, especially when Adam lived above 900 years to demonstrate the verity and inculcate the story of them, whereas the apostles were dead, and all the eyes of witnesses of their miracles in the fourth part of that time. In a word, though it be easy in this, and all other resemblances, to devise several dissimilitudes and disproportions, yet in the main there is an agreement, that the carelessness of posterity may blast the most powerful and important traditions. If it be further pretended that there is a disparity because God hath promised his Spirit to guide the Christians into truth and to preserve them from mistake, I shall only say 2 things, having fully answered before. First, whatever promise or privilege of the Spirit is made to Christians, surely it is a most absurd and unreasonable thing to pretend to the donation of this privilege and the performance of this promise unto such as we have now described, concerning whom the Scripture expressly tells us that they are sensual, not having the Spirit, and they cannot receive the Spirit of God. John 14, verse 17. Where the Spirit of God is, it brings light with it. It turns men from darkness into a marvelous light. It rouseth men out of the sleep of carelessness, and makes them give all diligence to make their calling and election sure. And therefore, where ignorance and profaneness are allowed and predominant, as apparently they were in this age, we may safely say such have not the Spirit of Christ dwelling in them. For where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, especially that which is the principal part of it, a liberty from the bondage of sin and Satan, by whom that age was so woefully captivated, that we need not many arguments to show that they were not influenced by God's Spirit, but acted by the rulers of the darkness of this world, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience.